It's time for the Writer's Block. We've got football, and more football. I'm Jenny Carlson here in the studios of the Oklahoman, joined by Cedric Golden in the studios of the Austin American-Statesman. Hello, friend.
What's going on, J. Carr? Football.
All the time this week. I know NBA preseason's starting, lots going on there. I know all of that, but so much football, especially in our two markets and for people in our neck of the woods with OU Texas or Texas OU, whichever you say, whichever side of the river you're on is the determining factor. But this rivalry game this Saturday at the Cotton Bowl, Cedric, it's got everybody buzzing in our neck of the woods and Big 12 country and really around the country because of the standing of these two programs. This is going to be a fun one. A couple of teams that are aspiring for another Big 12 championship, probably to try to meet again in the Big 12 championship game. When you look at these two teams in the matchup this year between the Sooners and the Longhorns, what's important in your mind? What's going to determine who comes away with the golden hat on Saturday afternoon?
Well, the biggest problem facing the Horns all year, Jen, is a lack of pass rush. They've always had a guy that could get to the quarterback, whether it's a Corey Redding, Tony Brackens back in the day, Tim Crowder, Brian Robinson from the championship team. But they don't have that this year. 0 sacks at West Virginia, very few pressures on Austin Kendall. So I think if they don't get to Jalen Hurts, they're going to be in for a long day. So I know Adrian Ely and Eric Swinson, those two good tackles, are questionable. It's the Red River rivalry, shootout, showdown, whatever you want to call it, Jen. Those boys are playing on Saturday. I can tell you. You strap it up and you come on with the Red River rivalry. You can sit out against Kansas and nobody will care. This is the big one. If Texas's defensive ends, Jeffrey McCullough, Taquan Graham, and who's the other one? Malcolm Roach. I mean, they've been so low pressure that I almost forgot his name. I think they need to bring it. They've got to get Jalen Hurts uncomfortable in that pocket. Yeah. And just like I told you, Jen, before he took one snap, he was going to be electric in this conference. He's been great under Lincoln Riley. What is he, Jen? What is Lincoln Riley to us?
He's the whisperer.
He's the quarterback whisperer. He's got Jalen Hurts playing like a Heisman Trophy winner. So you can't allow Jalen Hurts to be comfortable in his first Red River rivalry. You got to get him out of that pocket, and you got to make him think that there's some heat on him, or else Texas is going to be in for a long afternoon at the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah, it's interesting that that's going to be important for Texas. I think it's similar for Oklahoma, and maybe not necessarily flushing Sam Ehlinger, the Texas quarterback, out of the pocket, but containing him. Don't look now, but Sam Ehlinger's become a heck of a thrower. He leads the Big 12 with 17 touchdown passes, only 2 interceptions. He's really cut down those killer mistakes we saw from him even a year ago in his second year as a starter, his first as a full-time starter. Now he's really evolving, and, a lot of talk in the offseason about how good or not good he was, but he's a guy that I think can really hurt you with his arm now. And I didn't know if we'd get to that point with Sam Ehlinger, but I think he can do that. But at the same time, he's still a very capable runner. So what does Oklahoma do to try to contain both of those threats and mixing pressure and containment? I think a guy like Kenneth Murray at the linebacker spot is going to be very important. He's had a dynamic year for this Oklahoma defense, rebuilt under Alex Grinch, really opened up his skill set to show what he can do. But do they get some pressure with their defensive line? Neville Gallimore, arguably one of the best defensive linemen in the conference, even in the country, a really spectacular player, but can they allow him, can they work some situations where Gallimore can affect things? Can they have situations where Murray really enforces and puts his stamp on things? I think that's going to be big. Now, Cedric, obviously the passing games in this rivalry, the Oklahoma defense, the secondary there has been suspect in past years. Hasn't really been tested to the point that Texas is going to be able to. But at the same time, Texas has had a secondary that's been beat up a little bit this year. Sounds like Caden Stearns, the all Big 12 talent in the secondary, going to be likely unavailable with injury. So how big are the secondaries in all this in your mind?
Incredibly big, because this is a rivalry of big plays. by big time receivers like CeeDee Lamb, who's still on the team. Remember Hollywood Brown from last season, and there just been so many good receivers over the years that have made their stamp in this game. And the Texas Longhorns of the two teams are the least healthiest on the back end. I think that could be telling. Losing Caden Stearns is huge because he was a freshman All-American last year and had really had a good camp, even though he was banged up in the spring, got banged up again in the summer, and then got hurt early in the season. So they're expecting him back in a couple of weeks. No reason to play him next week against Kansas. They'll probably have him back a couple of weeks after Saturday's game. I think that the fact that Jalen Hurts has become such a good passer under Lincoln Riley is a big deal, and the fact that Sam Ehlinger has improved so much from freshman to sophomore to this year. Yeah. He's been on a steady incline going up, and so he's on the ascent. He's built for games like this, Jen. We know that Jalen Hurts' box office, 26-2 at Alabama, but Sam Ehlinger arrived. He arrived in big time against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl and sent a message out to the rest of college football that I'm going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the nation as a junior. Mm-hmm. He's delivered. This is going to be another big game from him. Remember last year when he took over that game early and OU spent most of the day coming back down 45-24 in the fourth quarter? That was all Sam Ehlinger, accounted for 5 touchdowns. So I am excited about the quarterback matchup. In past years, the team whose quarterback has played the best, i.e. a Baker Mayfield, a Kyler Murray usually, and then a Vince Young back in the day, Colt McCoy outdueling Sam Bradford in 08. Those have been the guys that have won the game, that have worn the golden hat. So this game will be very important for the secondaries, but it's all about the quarterbacks, Jen.
Yeah, and I think it does in games like this. You got to have your marquee guys play, and there's no more marquee than Jalen Hurts and Sam Ehlinger. I mean, that's just the truth. I do think it'll be interesting to see, as it relates to their passing, both really, really strong in the passing game, but both very capable of running. We've seen Jalen Hurts really carry a load in a lot of ways. Oklahoma's still getting really good production out of their running backs in terms of per carry yardage, what they're getting from both Trey Sermon, Kennedy Brooks, who was not available a week ago at Kansas, but expected to be back after he took a really, what looked to be almost a season-ending type of hit in the Texas Tech game, but they wanted to be cautious with him. He's expected to play, but then, you saw Ramondre Stevenson play in the Kansas game. He looks Samaje Perine-esque, but yet it's been Jalen Hurts carrying a lot of that rushing load, and what can he do to affect the game with his feet? What can they do with the running game? Texas, obviously, dynamic running backs as well. So how does that factor in? Maybe not those home run passes that everybody loves in the Big 12, but definitely important when you need to get yards. And I think with Cedric, as you mentioned off the top, Adrian Ely and Eric Swenson, if they don't play, if Oklahoma does not have those tackles, if it's a shuffled offensive line again, I think Jalen Hurts' feet become even more important in maybe sort of making up for some lacking starter talent on the offensive line. I think that's going to be important. But, as I think about this game, while star power is important, do you feel like an X factor is out there, Cedric? A year ago, it was the kicker for Texas, Michael Dicker, who became a hero, a guy like that. Do you see somebody who's maybe flying under the radar being an important name in this game on Saturday?
Yes, I do. And there's always a player that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Remember Mark Andrews, the 80-yard touchdown after Texas had taken the lead. I mean, games like guys like that. And we knew that Mark Andrews was an NFL tight end before he caught that pass, but he still needed to make that play, Jen. The guy that I'm looking at is on the Texas side of the ball, and his name is Rashawn Johnson. He's I want to say he's a redshirt freshman. I hope I got that right. Running back who was the third string quarterback to open the season. But Texas was beset by injuries at that position, and so they had to move him to running back, and he was the backup running back. But he's turned out to be their best running back so far, better than Keontae Ingram, the starter, who split carries with Trey Watson last year. Rashawn Johnson had 121 yards against West Virginia last week, and he's only been playing the position for a couple of months. So that guy's an X factor. Now we are nostalgic here when we start talking about it a little bit. There is no Ricky Williams in this game. There is no Cedric Benson. There is no Adrian Peterson. There is no Damon Parker. Those guys, those kind of talents aren't in this game, this particular game. But there are some really good running backs. And I think one of those four guys, Keontae Ingram, Rashawn Johnson, Sermon, who's the other one, Jay?
Kennedy Brooks.
Kennedy Brooks. One of those guys is going to have to take the pressure off their quarterbacks because we know the quarterbacks are an integral part of these rushing attacks. One of those running backs is going to have to step up, and whichever one steps up, it's going to be a lot easier for the offensive coordinators to call the game this week.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think those guys are going to be really important. Maybe in a volume, especially Oklahoma. We just haven't seen the running backs get a great volume of carries. What can they do? I think an X factor for me is a guy like Jaden Davis. He's a cornerback for Oklahoma, a guy that has really burst onto the scene. You know, they've got three guys they really like at cornerback, and when you're playing in a rivalry game, a game that's going to have a lot of emotion, likely a lot of snaps, you got to be able to throw some guys out there. And Jaden Davis has been a guy that has really excited a lot of Sooner fans. He's getting more and more playing time. Hasn't started yet, but is a guy that, you know, I think he's the type of player who I wonder if he's going to have a breakout moment in this game. You know, I think that they've got good play from Parnell Motley and Trey Brown at the other two cornerback spots. But, you know, as I mentioned before, Sam Ehlinger has not had those killer mistakes. Can Oklahoma's defense, which struggled so mightily to get turnovers a year ago, can they come up with one or two? I think Jaden Davis might be a guy that could be a candidate to get an interception, maybe a timely one. We'll see. I think that the turnover battle is going to be really big in this game. Oklahoma has struggled with it, continued to even under Alex Grinch, but can they get one or two to potentially give their offense some more possessions? That remains to be seen. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this one goes down. I think it's going to be another fourth quarter type of game like it was a year ago, and that's always fun in the Red River rivalry.